I think there are lots of ways to approach real estate, and there are lots of philosophies about what real estate should be. I guess there's an analogy to life. There are lots of ways to approach life. A short-term orientation to real estate, is the view that a lot of people have, and the value of their efforts is measured by how much money they make and how short of a period of time they hold a building, how little of their own equity they invest. And I think what it does is it really compromises the real standards for that ought to be applied to making building decisions. In any city in the U.S., you can drive down the highway and you can see examples of buildings that were built for the lowest possible cost, maybe in some really good locations, and if if you can lease them for the highest possible rates, your immediate short-term return is pretty nice. But do they really improve the quality of the built environment? Do they really kind of make a lasting contribution? Churchill said, that we shape our buildings and they shape us.
Right.
Frankly, I'm not one that wants to be shaped by Burger Kings and McDonald's and one-story stucco buildings on a freeway. I'm more interested in making a lasting contribution that I think will hopefully stand for multiple generations, hundreds of years, working in areas where there's limited supply of property. And so I think it forces you to kind of take a longer view. On the Capitol Square in Madison, it's a really good example. We have very limited land area. We're sandwiched on a narrow isthmus between two lakes. We're surrounded by residential neighborhoods that are relatively sacrosanct. So what's a good kind of long-term view of what you should do to improve the built environment and the quality of life in downtown Madison? It's cheaper to build above-grade parking. But with a height limit, if you build above-grade parking, you can't build enough density to really kind of bring life, activity, energy, jobs, to downtown. And so while it might be very difficult to put parking underground so that you can maximize the built environment, you can actually have shops, restaurants at the sidewalk level that will add to the quality of life. While it's very hard to do that, I think in the end, you build a project that actually does contribute something significantly to the built environment. And only if you're committed to keep it for the long term can you make the investment decisions that you should. Otherwise, you're most focused on cutting costs, building something as cheap as you can to maximize your profit. And you don't really care what happens to the second or third or fifth or 25th owner, 75 years from now. But if you view real estate as something that you or your successors are going to be responsible for the next 100 years, I submit that you take a different view of what you build. For me, it's all about building. It's all about creating. It's all about creating something special, something better than the generic, standard, and something that would maintain lasting value. And I think it's a really it's a different approach, but it's frankly an approach that we're more comfortable with than treating real estate as disposable.
We were touring your tobacco lofts and a couple other properties, and one of your employees was telling me about the great lengths that you guys went to, I believe, run some pipes underground so that there wouldn't have to be pipes on the outside, and to maintain a bit of the architectural and aesthetic integrity of the property. And then we looked at another place that was just really built to an incredibly high standard. And I said, what's the secret sauce here? Like, how are you making this work? Because I'm sure that there are other people on paper who would say, yes, you should build architecture of quality and the next generation. But at the end of the day, they just don't do it. And many times they would say, yeah, and if you go out, you lose your shirt trying. So how do you make the numbers work on these things?
We invest our own money. So we don't have partners. We don't need to go to a partner and who, is really demanding or driven by, a specific internal rate of return. When we started out and didn't have any money, we had partners because we had to. But we gradually decided that that we would rather make decisions for ourselves and commit our own resources, and so that we control what we do. In the last 25 years, I'm not sure we've probably had one project that had outside partners because they happen to own the land and we wanted to use it. But we invest our own money. We basically create that money by having buildings that are full and successful, The reason our buildings are full and successful is we build a better mousetrap. We build a better quality of environment than our competition does, under the theory that if we can keep our tenants happy for the long term and give them a fair price, whether they're renting apartments or renting office space or paying for parking, that they're gonna be, you know.
So necessity dictated that you started with partners, but once you were on that trajectory, rather than keep going with the partner system and just bigger and bigger and bigger partners, you kind of cashed out, so to speak, and began then 100% equity, 100%, not cash out, but okay, okay, right. How heavily did the initial deals where you had partners affect that course, or was that the plan all along? Yep. Mm-hmm. What kind of experience did ULI have during the Great Recession, quote unquote, in 2008, 2009? You're developing some things, but then you also have a pretty major portfolio. How how is the experience of a developer or development company that has a big portfolio of long-term hold similar to and also different from the experience of a developer who's doing a lot of transaction-based work? Right. Right. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Different ones. I mean, I saw you had architectural magazines in your lobby, which is not something I imagine I would see in lots of developers' offices. So, talk to me a little bit about your relationship to architecture, to architects, and things to watch out for there. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.